Good morning, everyone. It is 11:02, so let's get it started. My name is Chris Abeliana, and welcome to today's Leveling Up on Admin Skills within QuickSight. My name again, Chris Abeliana. I manage the QuickSight team for North America, and today we are joined by my team here, as well as Padmaja Saren, who is going to lead our session. She comes to us with over 20 years of experience in building data warehouses, BI, and analytics platforms in various industries. He'll be leading today's workshop showcasing the capabilities of QuickSight's admin. So with that said, Padmaja, take it away.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome everybody for this fall enablement series. So the workshop today, as Chris pointed out, is an admin workshop, which means a little bit more advanced than the regular business workshops that you might have attended in the past. This workshop is part of the fall enablement series. So we'll start with some pointers on what are the series of workshops that we have completed already, and what the learning objectives of this agenda, this session is all about, and going in depth about the workshop agenda so you can be prepared to figure out where you want to pay more focus and attention to. And this being a large-scale one-way communication model, I wanted to present some recommendations on how to make the best use of this session. We'll present a model that we are going to follow here, and some more logistics around the workshop, and then we'll launch into the workshop itself. So, as I mentioned before, this is part of the fall enablement series. We have already completed 3 workshops, and the workshop videos are available on our QuickSight channel. This slide deck will also be available to you. I'm going to post it on the chat now. And this workshop, as we can tell, is a repeat of the admin workshop that was already done a couple of weeks ago by my colleague Adnan Hassan. But this workshop has a little bit of a variation. We'll go over that as we move through the session. The primary learning objectives of this workshop is to learn how to automate dashboard deployment, which is very critical for many of the companies these days that are implementing CI/CD pipelines. And we want to show you how to customize access to QuickSight console. And this is important from the perspective of privacy regulations such as GDPR and CCPA and other things such as that. And how to configure for team collaboration. So whenever there is a BI initiative, dashboard initiative happens, it's not just one person who builds all that. There's always a team of people working together, including the data scientists, data engineers, BI developers, and so on. So we'll show you how to configure QuickSight for that purpose. And finally, we'll talk about multi-tenancy and client user segregation. So those are the main high-level topics we are going to be discussing. The agenda itself is going to go in this way. We'll start off with the workshop scenario, and we'll talk about the workshop prerequisites, where we'll be running some CloudFormation. And then this workshop is going to be a persona-based workshop. So we'll be assuming 3 different ISV user perspective. ISV is the SaaS vendor, which is the perspective that we are taking in this workshop. And there will be 2 customer users, and we'll be impersonating all these 5 different users throughout the workshop and executing certain tasks according to their particular job roles. We'll then prepare the lab environment based on QuickSight and Cloud9. So we'll talk a little bit more about it. And then there will be 3 different modules that we'll go through, and each module will have a session where we'll be presenting the concepts, and then followed by the hands-on lab sessions. And we'll end with the workshop summary and quick question and answers as we go through them. So this being a very large-scale enablement, and I'm not able to interact with you as much as I could if we were in an in-person workshop. There are certain things that we try to come up with, innovate a little bit, so we can make this a seamless experience for you. So first of all, there will be a way that I'm going to be talking about certain concepts and also the overview of the steps in each of the labs. And I will review step-by-step screenshots of what we'll be doing in the lab itself. So when you're actually following along with what I'm doing in the labs, you will have an idea where to go and what to click on the console, or whether it is Cloud9 where you'll be executing API commands. So it's a learn, watch, and do model. So I'll be talking for a little bit on the concepts. I'll be showing you step-by-step screenshots of the lab steps, and then I'll call out while I'm actually doing the labs itself. So to help from your end, I've also provided a link in the chat box, that's called a workshop helper package. So it contains the PDF of this deck that you're seeing right now. And it also has a bunch of other files that'll be helpful. I'll go over them in a little bit. So keeping those open will also be helpful. In terms of the logistics itself, we are going to be using this workshop link. And this is, like I mentioned before, this is an admin workshop that was already delivered. But this version of the workshop today's workshop is slightly different. So from the workshop link, we are going to be using step 3 and step 6, but then the rest of the steps will be presented within this PowerPoint deck. There'll be individual instructions provided. So in order to make the best use of this workshop, you must have some familiarity with REST APIs. If you have familiarity with QuickSight, that's great. If not, we'll go over that a little bit. And the variation of this particular workshop is that instead of data lake, we are going to be using relational data source. And those instructions are found in the deck, in the PowerPoint, in the PDF that I have sent on the chat. And last but not the least, make sure you close other applications, because this workshop could be a little intense. We'll be multitasking a lot. We'll be opening up multiple different browsers. We'll be impersonating one user versus another. So there's a lot of switching between applications that we are going to be doing. So closing other applications might make it helpful for you. And some clients have also found it helpful to disconnect from VPN, because sometimes you can't get onto some of the websites, and we don't want you to miss some of the steps. So because we are going to be switching personas, either use 2 different browsers or use a browser in incognito mode, that's going to help also make the experience seamless for you. So let's actually take a look at the workshop helper package. It contains 3 sets of files. So there is a PDF, which is PowerPoint deck that I'm using here for the session today. And it contains a whole set of JSON files and a helper file that contains code snippets for executing. So I'm going to now take the time for all of us to download that workshop helper package. So use the chat window in case you have not gotten access to the file set. So this is what you should have gotten once you unzip the file. So we have the PDF and the zip file. When you extract the zip file, these are all the files you should see. So I want to open up workshop helper file.txt just to review what is in this file. So the majority of our workshop today is going to deal with executing QuickSight APIs. And for that purpose, we'll be using command line terminal commands. And all of those commands, along with some step-by-step instructions, are what are listed here. So some of the steps will be carried out on QuickSight console. Some of it will be carried out on the terminal. So those terminal commands are here, along with some steps. And these JSON files will be used in conjunction with the CLI commands. And I'll go through them as and when we come to that particular portion of the lab. So I'll talk about the alternatives, Cloud9 and RDS alternatives, in a short bit. And having this PDF also open might be helpful, because there are a few links in the PDF file that I'll call out the slide number, and you can click on the link in order to go immediately to that particular set of instructions. So I'll pause here and make sure that everybody got through all of this download. Okay. So let's launch into the workshop itself. So like I mentioned before, this workshop is built from an ISV and SaaS provider perspective. However, that doesn't mean it is not applicable to enterprises. It is also applicable to enterprises. Just like a SaaS provider might be dealing with multiple companies and clients that they are tenants that they are onboarding into their company. In larger enterprises, this can be applicable for business units that you're onboarding, different departments that you're onboarding. So the principles still remain the same, but for the purpose of delineating various different roles, we are choosing to mention as the SaaS and ISV provider. So we'll, what we are going to be working through in the scenario is how the ISV team administers the dashboard, designs and deploys it, and how they segregate tenants in the QuickSight environment and how they register the users. And finally, how each dashboard is customized for that particular tenant. And the tenant is only able to see their data and how that segregation works. So this is kind of the very high level workflow. So before we move any further, I'd like us to kick off the CloudFormation script because it takes a little while to create all the resources that we need for this workshop. So it's going to be creating, the CloudFormation script is going to be creating a bunch of different resources for our purposes. But for this workshop purposes, we only need to look at the list of users that it creates. And I'll talk more about it as we go along. But in order to execute the CloudFormation script, you need to log into AWS account, and you must have a login that has admin access. So make sure you have admin access in order to log into the console. So I'm going to, if you go navigate over to your PDF file on slide 13, page 13, you should see a link, which is what I'm going to click to go through what are the steps involved. So here we are going to be running through the steps under option 1, running the lab in personal QuickSight account. That's what we are going to be doing. So first you need to log into your AWS account and create an EC2 key pair. So this is required in order to run the CloudFormation template. If you have an existing key pair, if you have an account already, you can even use that key pair. But in case you do not, we are going to create one. So to create that key pair, we are going to log into the EC2 console. That is the place where you create a key pair. We're going to name the key pair admin-workshop. I'm going to copy this name here. And accept the defaults for PEM as the file format and create the key pair. So once I finish that, I'm going to come back here and click on CloudFormation URL button. That's going to give me a unique URL that I can execute to create my resources in my account. Okay, I'm going to click on Amazon EC2 console link here. And make sure I'm in US East, North Virginia region at the very top. So be consistent in the region that we are creating all our resources in. I'm choosing to use US East, and I would recommend that you do the same. So I'm going to create a new key pair. I see key pair, either you can pick from the left navigation menu, or you can go to the dashboard where you can see key pairs. So use the dashboard to create a key pair. Hitting on this button for create key pair. In the workshop, from the workshop, I copied the key pair name that says admin-workshop. I'm going to paste that here. I'm going to choose the file format as PEM and hit create key pair. So now that I have my key pair, I'm going to switch back into my workshop page. I now need my CloudFormation URL. So step 2 here is a blue button that says Get CloudFormation URL. I'm clicking on that. And I have a new, another link that shows up. I'm going to click on that link. This is my unique customized link that I get for me to deploy it in my account. So this is the CloudFormation console in my account. And if I scroll down, follow the prompt to next. And you can see there are a few parameters here that are pre-filled. We'll leave it like that. We'll give it a stack name. I'm going to name it Admin Workshop Stack. And under the parameters, you can see that some database is configured. There is a master username. And you can see the EC2 key pair, and it points to Admin Workshop, the key pair that I just created. I'm going to accept all of this. No changes to be made except for stack name, and click on Next. In the following page, there's nothing to be changed. I just accept the prompt, go to the next page. Here is where I'm able to review what I configured on the CloudFormation. And I scroll down all the way, acknowledge that the script is going to create some resources, and I'm going to create the stack. So now you should see the stack create in progress. So while it is creating, I'm going to switch back to my slide deck and resume the presentation. So what this CloudFormation stack is going to create for us, amongst other resources, is it's going to create users for these 5 personas. So from the ISV perspective, we are going to have 3 folks who are going to be responsible for managing and deploying dashboards. The first role is going to be an admin role, who will have full access to database and full admin access to QuickSight. And then we'll have 2 authors with varying degrees of permissions. So one of them is a data curator who will have permission to access a data source and folders in order to organize the work that they are doing. And another author will be able to create visualizations and will have permissions to access what is called a data set. We'll learn more about what a data source and a data set are within QuickSight's context. And from the customer perspective, there are going to be 2 users. One will be an author, another one will be a reader. Reader is the regular dashboard consumer who has read-only access to the dashboard. The author on the customer side will have access to a certified data set that is pertaining only to their company. They will not have access to all the data set. So we'll see how all these permissions are going to be implemented, and how the access will be restricted on various different levels. In terms of the workflow, the entire lab's workflow follows this. So we are going to be first logging in as an admin persona, where we'll customize the rest of the users' access to QuickSight. So there are 2 other users we are going to configure here, the 2 authors of ISV. So one author should have access only to the data source to create data sets. The other author should have permission only to create visualizations. So we'll be setting that up as an admin. And we'll also create the data source, put in the credentials, because admin is the only person who has access to the database, admin rights to the database. So they'll have access to the credentials and everything. And once they create that data source, they'll be sharing that with the data curator. So the data curator persona will log in as that persona and create data sets and share those data sets with the business analyst. And the business analyst will pick up the data set that was shared with them, and they will build the visualization and analysis. And once they are done, they're going to share that with the admin. And the admin is now going to deploy the dashboard and also configure for multi-tenancy. So there is a slight variation that we adopted here in this workflow. Typically, you could have both data curator and business analyst as a single person who is able to create the data set and build visualization and also deploy the dashboard from within the console. So just for the purpose of this workshop, we have tried to segregate these kind of user roles so that you can adapt in any different ways. And another thing we are not showing here is the business analyst is not deploying the dashboard, but only building the visualization. It is possible that the business analyst could deploy a dashboard from within the console, but we want to show, because this workshop is all about introducing you to QuickSight APIs, we wanted to move that into the admin role. So it's possible to deploy from within the console. Just I wanted to point that out. Okay. So let's actually review CloudFormation. What did the CloudFormation create for us? Like I mentioned before, the things that we are interested in are the users that it creates. And what this means is, in this workshop, what we have attempted to do is, in order to keep things simple, we are using IAM as an authentication mechanism. So all the ISV users, all the 3 ISV users that we are seeing are going to log in from the console. Typically, that might be all right because these are employees in your company, and when you have your AWS account, they can log into the console and then access QuickSight. But not all the time you want that method of access. You want your end users, especially your readers, to be able to log directly into QuickSight, and that is also possible. And instead of IAM authentication, you could also have other types of authentication, such as Active Directory. QuickSight has a direct integration with Active Directory. You can hook it up from within the console, and all the groups that you have set up in Active Directory and the users, all of that will come over into QuickSight. And you can further fine-tune and provide even additional restrictions upon the users based on what their roles are. Or if you have any SAML 2.0 based IDPs, you can use that as well. We recently released Service Provider Initiated SSO that allows you to have your end users log in with the method that they're already familiar with using that IDP, and QuickSight will integrate easily. So if you want to learn more about it, there are some resources provided. You can click on them and learn more. So let's actually go to click on this link underneath here that's going to the IAM console, just to see if our CloudFormation stack is done. So here's our CloudFormation stack completed the creation of users. So this is the console here. You see there are 7 users created. I'm going to click on that link and see, in my case, there are 7 users. In your case, there may be 6. So you see there is a bunch of users starting with ISV, and we are interested in ISV admin, ISV business analyst, and ISV data curator. So those are the 3 personas we are going to be impersonating. It also created customer users. There is an author on the customer side, and there is a reader on the customer side. We'll talk more about them as we go along. So what I want you to do now is click on the dashboard on the left-hand side, and under the sign-in URL for IAM users in this account, you see a link. I want us to copy that link. I'm clicking on the icon and copying the link. I'm going to use it downstream now. So I'll pause here so everybody can has done copying it. And switch back to my presentation. So let's talk about how the labs are going to flow. So now that we have our resources created, we are going to, and the users are created, we are going to assume the persona, the various persona, and start to execute our labs. The very first step is going to be preparing our environment for executing the rest of the labs. So we'll be logging in as ISV admin user and create a Cloud9 environment. We'll talk a little bit about what Cloud9 is in the next slide. And then we'll also create a QuickSight account because it's the first time we are using QuickSight, and we need to set up that account as well. Once those 2 are created, once the lab environment is prepared, then we'll start executing the various different tasks. We'll start setting up, configuring QuickSight to provide the customizing user experience. We'll create folders so that the team, ISV data curator and ISV business user can collaborate, and then configure a data source and share it with the data curator. And in module 2, that is where we'll be creating the data set, creating the analysis, and building the dashboard, deploying the dashboard. And we'll be impersonating 3 different personas. So first, we'll log in as a data curator, and we'll see how they are able to create the data set. We'll learn more about using QuickSight UI. And once the data set is created and shared with the business analyst, we'll log back in as the business analyst and create the analysis and the visualizations. In the third step, as part of module 2, we'll hand it over to the admin who can then deploy the data set, deploy the dashboard. And there are certain other things they'll do, such as create a certified data set for the customer and move the dashboard into production so that it'll be accessible for our customers. And then finally, ISV admin role will implement namespace and multi-tenancy, which is how namespaces are the way that we implement multi-tenancy within QuickSight, and we'll show how that happens. So this is kind of the overall lab workflow. So before we launch into preparing the environment, we'll talk about the first step in this, which is creating Cloud9 environment. So what is Cloud9? For those of you who are new to Cloud9, it is basically an EC2 instance. We are going to create a Linux instance with pre-installed software. And we are going to use this primarily for executing all the REST API commands that we are going to carry out. Alternatively, you can also use your local machine with CLI installed and configured. And if you don't have CLI installed and configured, in the zip file that I sent you, so there is a Cloud RDS alternatives, and I have some instructions where you can install and configure CLI in case that is the route you want to go. Okay. So if you want to navigate to the PDF file in page number 21, you have a link to where I want us to look at the instructions for setting up Cloud9. So here are the step-by-step instructions with screenshots on how to set up Cloud9. First, I'm going to log in as ISV admin, and then I'm going to look for Cloud9 service on the main page. It's going to land me into Cloud9 console. I hit create environment, give a name for the environment, and accept the defaults, which is basically creating an EC2 instance despite of instance type, which is a very small instance type, and a Linux platform. That is all I'm going to do. So it's a very simple instance that we are going to create. So I'm going to copy the name of the environment I want to create. It is in step 3, admin workshop CLI. That is the one I'm going to copy. And I'm going to switch to my AWS console. So where I was on the IAM console here, I'm going to log out. Oh, before I logged out, I should have done this. We copied the link for shoot. I'm going to give me just a minute. I'm going to stop my screen share. And I'll come back. I had to, I forgot that I needed to copy my console link. So I logged back into my console, AWS Management Console, as my original admin account, in my original admin account. Going into IAM, I'm copying this sign-in URL link because I'm going to need that for my subsequent labs. And I'm going to log out of my account, use this link to log in. And before I proceed, I want us to open up the workshop helper file that we already saw. So this is kind of a scratch pad where we are going to cut and paste a lot of things because we are constantly going to reuse our link. We are going to be reusing our account numbers and all that kind of stuff, and the passwords and switching between personas. So that's what this helper file is going to help us with. So in that, there is a placeholder for console link. I'm going to go ahead and paste the console link I just copied. And as part of the console link, you should see a 12-digit number here. That is our AWS account number. And I'm going to find and replace this placeholder that says your-AWS-account. I'm going to replace that with this number. So I'm going to go do a replace with the number. And this should take care of replacing throughout my file here, helper file here. So I'm just going to go do a look over that it's replaced everywhere. And I don't see the placeholder that says your AWS-account. And I'm going to save my file. So I'll pause here for everybody to catch up. So what I did was I went to the IAM console. I copied the console link. I opened up workshop helper file, replaced the placeholder for the console link with the one that I copied. And from the console link, I captured the account number, which is a 12-digit number, and replaced that account number in all the placeholders that says your AWS account. And I save my workshop helper file. Good. All right. So now I'm switching back to the console. I used my console link and it already pre-populated my account. And because I have used ISV admin before, it is showing up. And in the workshop helper file, I have the admin password. So copy this password from the workshop helper file and bring it back into your console page and sign in. So make sure you are in the right region, US East 1 or North Virginia region. And the first step for me is to create a Cloud9 environment. I'm going to look for Cloud9 in this search box. And it lands me on the Cloud9 console. I'm going to click on Create Environment. I'm going to give it a name, Admin Workshop -CLI. That is the environment name I want to call it. Click on Next. Accept all the defaults on this page. It's going to say very first option, which is EC2 instance, and the instance type is T2 micro, and the platform is Linux platform. And I accept. And finally, hit create in the last step. So while this is creating, let me go back to my deck. So we just click Cloud9 environment creation. So the next step is to create a QuickSight account. On page 22 in your PDF, there is a link to the step-by-step instruction on how to set up QuickSight. So click on that link. So this one also requires me to log in as ISV admin on the admin console and then find QuickSight. So once I click on QuickSight, it's going to, because this is the first time I'm accessing QuickSight, it's going to ask me to sign up for QuickSight. So once you sign up, we'll then be able to configure which edition that we want. Typically, people go for the enterprise edition. As you can see, it has a rich set of features that are supported than the standard one. So we recommend, even for this workshop, you're going to be using enterprise, but even in your experimentation, we recommend that you do that. And once you accept that, then you'll be able to configure your QuickSight for further use. So the first thing it is going to ask is, how are you going to authenticate yourself? So there are two options. One is role-based federation, which will be anything including SAML2 IDPs or IAM or whatever it is, or Active Directory. So you can only use either or, you can't use both for a particular QuickSight account. So you will choose which one, how you are going to be authenticating, and then you're going to pick a region. And this is quite important. The region that you choose at the time of configuring QuickSight is called an identity region. And this region becomes important. Once you pick an identity region and you build your assets within the QuickSight, if later on you want to change regions, you will not be able to do that. And you have the risk of losing all the assets you created. So make sure that you're choosing the right region in your environment. The recommendation is to create a region in the same region where your data resources are sitting. So that way you're not incurring additional charges. So in our case, our database is in US East, and that is where we are going to be creating all of these. And then you need to provide a QuickSight account name. Account name must be unique. And any valid email address, format is fine. You don't have to have a valid email itself, but just the valid format. And we'll accept rest of the defaults and move on, and it's going to create the account. So what I'm going to do, follow up with the first step, copy the login as ISV admin. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my workshop helper file, copy my console link, open up a browser, log in as ISV admin. On the management console, I'm going to look for QuickSight. And I land on the screen where it's asking me to sign up for QuickSight. So I'll pause a little bit for you to catch up. I'm going to go hit sign up for QuickSight. As I said, we have either standard or enterprise. I'm going to pick enterprise and continue. I'm going to leave use role-based federation because that's what we are using. We're using IAM. I'm going to leave it as that. I'm going to pick US East North Virginia region because that's where I have. I'm going to give a QuickSight account name. Actually, if you want to switch back into your workshop helper file and you have the QuickSight account name, which you can copy and paste. So I'm stating admin workshop dash my account number so that it can be unique. I'm going to give a notification email address. Any dummy email is fine as long as it is the right format. And I'm going to accept the rest of the defaults and finish. So while this is getting set up, let's switch back to Cloud9 and see what happened with Cloud9. So if you are not able to see the Cloud9 screen, you can always go to the management console like I did and look for Cloud9. It should appear on the recently visited services and click on that. That should take you to the Cloud9 console. So you see that my environment is created. I'm going to click on Open IDE. And I see my IDE here. So the layout is kind of interesting. We have the terminal at the bottom in the screen. There is a splash screen that is seems to be looking at AWS Cloud9, and the top is where you can add a lot of different files. On the left-hand side, there is a pane that will show you what are your assets that you're working on. So I'm going to kind of clean up this this environment to work on it in the way that I like to. So I'm going to go into View menu at the top, find Layout, and choose the third one in the list called Horizontal Split. So this gives me a side-by-side view of panes that's going to help me. And I'm going to, on each pane, you see it has a plus sign. I'm going to click on the plus sign of the pane on the right-hand side. I'm going to make that my terminal. So hit New Terminal. So my right pane is always going to be a terminal. You can choose whatever you want. And my left pane is where I'm going to have a file. I'll open a new file. And I also want to maximize my screen real estate. I'm going to get rid of the bottom terminal by clicking on the X in the far right corner. So we have a few of my colleagues available here. If you have any questions, keep posting your questions. If the pace is okay, or should I go a little slower, faster, just give me some feedback. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is upload all the JSON files and the workshop helper file into Cloud9 so that I can, I don't have to keep switching tabs in order to cut and paste. So in order to do that, I'm going to navigate up to File menu option at the top and find Upload Local Files in the option down towards the bottom and select Files. I'm going to select all the JSON files and the workshop helper file that I already copied and pasted my console information, console link information. I'm going to upload all of that. I'm going to open up my Scratchpad, my helper file, with all the data replaced with my account information and everything, right? So this way, I'll just need to copy and paste between the terminal and this file. That makes my life a little easier. Okay, so I'm setting up my environment here. Let me see what happened to QuickSight. I'm switching my tab over to the QuickSight tab. Looks like QuickSight completed setting up. I'm going to click on Go to Amazon QuickSight. And at the very first time you log into QuickSight, it creates some template, some sample dashboards for you using some sample data. So that's what you're seeing. These are all the assets that you're seeing. So in QuickSight, we basically have 4 different types of assets. One is called the data source. Another one is data set, analysis, and dashboards. And we recently added folders. So those are the things you're seeing on the left-hand side menu. So the very first thing, what are we going to do here? Let's switch back to my PowerPoint slide. So before I start jumping into the lab, let's go over what are the concepts that are going to be covered in this module. So in the configuration module, what we are going to be looking at is setting up user access to QuickSight in a way that has restricted permissions to the two users. So I am now going to be logging in as admin who has the control over everything, and I'm the one who's going to set people up with appropriate permissions. And how to do that? We are going to use something called custom permissions in conjunction with user registration process, and we'll see how we are going to do that. And the next step is we're going to set up some folders so that the collaboration between the data curator and the business analyst can happen. So typically a workflow is that a data curator builds the data set and then shares it with the business analyst. The analyst builds their analysis and shares it with the QA and test team. And then a test team passes everything. Then it goes to the administrator who is now ready to deploy the dashboard into production. So that's kind of the workflow we are emulating here. And then the third step, what the administrator is going to do is set up the data source. So I want to talk a little bit about it. So QuickSight has a lot of connectors to various different types of data sources, whether it is Snowflake, databases, or third-party tools such as Salesforce, ServiceNow, Jira, and also to all of our internal AWS ecosystems such as Athena, Redshift, any RDS. All those are connectors that are available. And we are building new connectors to new data sources also. But not only that, the QuickSight also supports various different data pipeline and architectures. So you might have all heard about data lake being a more predominant, becoming more predominant these days. So data lake allows you to handle both structured and unstructured data. In AWS, we handle that in terms of making S3 as our storage for this primary storage mechanism for structured as well as unstructured data. So what that involves is using a set of tools such as Glue, which will create a semantic layer on top of this S3 data set, because S3 is not relational, right? So you need to have some kind of a relational structure on top of your non-relational data. So non-relationally stored data. So it could be CSV, it could be Parquet format, or anything that's more optimal that works for your scenario. So a Glue allows you to build a semantic data layer on top. Glue also allows you to do some ETL on your data. And then we have another service called Athena that allows you to query your data in S3 as if you're issuing a SQL query against a data warehouse. So that is one model, then one architecture that QuickSight supports. Another one is the more common and very well used one is the data warehouse. And as you know, the AWS has Redshift as its primary data warehouse utility, and that is the primary service. We support that. And more recently, our customers have started to build lake houses. So lake houses are a combination of the best of the both worlds, right? Best of data lake and best of the data warehouse. They both have their own advantages. So the way it works, especially we use using Redshift, it has the capability to access S3 natively from within Redshift and also access its own Redshift tables, right? So you could have what our customers are choosing to do is storing their cold data in S3 and keeping their hot data in highly optimized Redshift tables and issuing a query against these two data sets residing in two different storage systems as if it is very seamless. And Redshift allows you to do that. And this is the architecture that we refer to as Lakehouse architecture, and that is also supported. So before we talk about customizing permissions, we need to understand what are we really customizing permissions for the users, right? So when the user logs into QuickSight, how are we going to restrict? What are we going to restrict? So to understand that is where we are introducing the concept of the QuickSight assets. Like I just mentioned a little while ago, there are 4 types of assets within QuickSight. So there is a data source asset that stands on its own, that contains the credentials to connect to your particular data source, whichever that it is you're choosing to use. And then a data set object, which also stands on its own, which uses the data source that you have created and picks the columns and adds any new columns that you want to compute on top of the existing ones, apply any joins, join with multiple other tables, multiple other sources, and apply any where clause against it. So that is what the data set object does. Analysis object takes the data set and builds all the visualization. So it has a very rich set of analysis features, visualization widgets that are available. And then once the analysis is all done, during the analysis phase is also where you will build interactivity such as drill downs or filters and whatnot. And then you can push it out, deploy it as a dashboard. And the dashboard is where you can set permissions, who can access the dashboard, what they can do on the dashboard, what is the level of interactivity you want to give to the end users. All those kind of things you can configure in the dashboard. So each one of these are 4 separate objects. They have their own unique identifier, and they can be independently secured and shared. So this kind of decoupling is extremely helpful, and we'll see that going down the line when it comes to deploying dashboards and programmatically automating dashboard deployments. Because of this unique identifier and individual assets, these are possible for us to do. So then, while coming to the question of customizing user access, we now have the ability to independently give users access to any one of these 4 different assets, and also different features, whether we want the user to be able to subscribe for email reports, or they can send or receive email reports. So those are some of very fine-grained permissions you can set. So this feature is available only in Enterprise Edition and only with federated logins. And it is a 2-step process. The first step is to define the permission, what combination of restrictions you want to apply. And should it be data source and data set, or should it be all 3, data source, data set, and analysis that you want to restrict, or is it only the data source you want to restrict? So you can have various different permutations of combinations of how you want to set the restriction. And that is the first step. The second step is to attach this permission to a user. So this decoupling allows you to be more flexible. As and when a user's role changes, you can just attach them to that particular permission set, right? If you want more information, I've provided a link here that you can go through and read. So that is what we are going to do in Lab 1. So we'll create the permissions policy, and we'll register the user and attach that policy to the user. So in this visual here, you see the certain boxes are blue in color, certain boxes are in gray colored. So blue colored are the ones where we'll take action on the console, on the QuickSight console, and wherever it is grayed out, those are the steps we'll follow on Cloud9, where we'll be using APIs. Okay, so let's look at Lab 1. Let's follow the instructions in workshop helper file. So I'm going to switch to the helper file. And here is the custom permissions, module 1, lab 1, create custom permissions. And I'm going to do that within the console. So I'm going to copy permission 1, restrict data source permission. So before I start on that, let me show you step by step what we are going to be doing. So on QuickSight, we'll be going into the management console and clicking on manage permissions. And that is going to bring us to a page where you can define custom permissions. Right now, the screen is a little bit dated. The screenshot is a little bit dated. We have expanded more objects that you can restrict here. You'll see that as we are going through. And we are checking which one is it that we want to restrict. We want to restrict creating a data source or creating a data set and the data source, which is the second permission we'll create. Okay. So I'm going to switch back to QuickSight. I'm logged in as admin. And as you can see in the far right corner where there is the icon, I'm going to click on that icon, and the very first option there is Manage QuickSight. I'm going to click on that option. This is the management console, and I'm on the screen that says manage users. So on the left-hand side, you see a lot other management features available here. I won't go through them at this point, but basically, this is where you come in to administer spice capacity, manage your subscriptions, manage your users, and set up any other security that you want to apply to this account. And managing VPC connections in case you want to connect your databases securely, you can do that using VPC connections. And it also, QuickSight also supports embedding. So there are some configuration that you can do here. And single sign-on, like I said, just recently we released service provider initiated single sign-on, and those configurations can be set here. All right, so now I'm going to create a custom permission that I'll eventually be using for my users. I'm going to create 2 custom permissions. So in order to do that, I'm going to click on Manage Permissions button here. And create. I just copied the permission 1 name, which is restrict data source. I'm going to paste that here. And as you can see, we are allowing you to restrict a lot more of these objects, whether it is dashboard and analysis or data sets, data sources, or reports. So this first permission I'm going to be creating, I'm creating this in keeping in mind what are the permissions I want to assign for the data curator. So if I take a step back and look at the data curator's role, this is the person who will be creating data sets. They will need access to a data source, right? So, however, I do not want them messing with the data source itself. I don't want them looking at the credentials of the database, how to connect to the database, or where the servers are located, and things like that. So I'm going to restrict creating or updating all data sources. So that is the permission I want to restrict for them. Okay, and hit create. So it tells me it created the custom permission. I'm going to switch back to my workshop helper file, copy the name of permission 2, which says restrict data source and data set. I'm going to come back to QuickSight, hit create, and paste that value. So this is the permission I want to attach to the business analyst. And what kind of permission I want them to have. I want them to be able to access the data set and build a visual, but I do not want them changing the data set in any way, changing the underlying query in any way. I want them to not mess with the where clauses. I do not want any of that. I also do not want them creating and updating any data sources that are existing. So they are only going to have access to the analysis piece of it. So I'm going to lock down the other 2, which is data sources and data sets. Okay. And hit create. So now I have these 2 restrictions, permissions created. Now I want to register the user and attach this permission to them. For this purpose, I'm going to switch to Cloud9 because I'm going to carry out registering the users via API. So if you click on the back button and come here, you'll see there is the console just does say invite users, right? So it is possible for us to set up users in QuickSight even within this console. But whenever you're using custom permissions, at this point, we do not have a mechanism for you to attach the custom permissions from within the console. That is why we have to use APIs. Okay, and I'm going to show you how. Another question might come to your mind. Why do I have to create users within QuickSight? Right? So you can always, you created one in IAM, isn't that enough? It is not enough. You do need to create users in QuickSight because QuickSight has additional levels of permission mechanism available that you can leverage. So QuickSight supports 3 types of user roles. One is admin, another one is author, and the last one is reader. So each one, as the name says, admin has all over control over the management console and administering QuickSight as a whole. Author has much deeper access into the authoring side, visualizations, and the analysis side of the house. And reader has the very limited permissions of only accessing the dashboard. So those are the 3 roles you will have to set up within QuickSight before you even roll out your dashboards. So I'm going to switch back to Cloud9. And I have set up my environment like this. I went to my view option. I changed the layout to horizontal split. So now I have a side-by-side environment. On my right-hand side is my terminal. On the left-hand side is my workshop helper file. I'm going to collapse my left panel, and I'll increase the size so you can see clearly what I have on my helper file. Okay. So I'm going to scroll down to the area where it says Lab 1, Module 1, Lab 1, Provision User for Data Curator, and follow the instructions under there. Okay. On the right-hand side, I have my my terminal, which is where I'm going to execute my QuickSight APIs. So QuickSight has a very rich set of APIs. We have, and it is very intuitive. Whether it is you want to create a dashboard, you want to register a user, you want to update permissions to the dashboard, or list what all the data sets you have, what are the, creating a new data set, creating a new data source, whatever you can imagine, whatever you can carry out within QuickSight on the console, you have an equivalent API available for that. Granted, not all of QuickSight console activities have a corresponding API. We are still catching up, but there are certain, just as we saw with the custom permissions, we do not have a mechanism on the console to be able to attach that. Similarly, folders is a new feature. We do not have API access for folders at this point. So there are certain gaps, but eventually you'll have APIs for almost all the actions that you can take. So those are the APIs that we are going to be introducing you to today. All right, so now I'm ready to provision my user, which is my first user is Data Curator. And I'm going to read through the instruction here. It says, upload the file, create datacurator.json. I already uploaded this file. So I'm going to go find it and open that up. And then it says, paste your account, AWS account, and save. Okay, so let me find my datacurator.json. Here it is. And sure enough, I have my AWS account placeholders there. I still don't have my numbers replaced. So I'm going to copy and I'm going to do a find and replace. So go to the find option at the top, do a replace, and you should see something pop up at the very bottom of your screen for find and replace. So I'm going to copy this placeholder that says find and put it in the find area. And I'm going to scroll up to the top of my workshop helper file where I have the account number. I'm going to copy that account number and put it in the replace with section in the find and replace, and hit and make sure my cursor is on the datacurator.json file and hit replace all. And that should replace my placeholders. And this is how my file should look. So as you can tell here, this file is setting up all the parameters required for me to register a user. So I'm registering the user in IAM, and the email is this, and the user role for this particular user is an author. However, this author is having certain restricted permissions, and I have put the custom permissions that we are restricting data source. So this is the custom permission I just created. So as you can tell, you may want to make sure that you have spelled everything correctly, because these are pre-copied and pasted values. So if you did not give the right name when you are creating your custom permissions, make sure to make that correction here. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and save this file. I made all the changes. Save this file and close it out. And switching back to my helper file, I'm going to execute the command on the terminal, the command that says AWS QuickSight register user, followed by CLI input JSON. I'm going to copy this whole line and paste it into my terminal. So I'll pause here for people to catch up. So what we did was we opened up create JSON, create data curator.json. We replaced the account number with the valid account numbers. We saved it. And now we are copying and pasting the CLI command for registering the user. That is the API. So AWS QuickSight register user is the command that I'm issuing, and it is accepting a parameter of a JSON file, CLI input JSON, and I'm giving the file where it is located, which is datacurator.json. I'm going to hit enter. And it comes back with a status 201 that tells me the user got created. Okay. If I want to check, I can actually switch back into QuickSight. I'm on the Manage Users portal here. If I refresh the screen, I should be able to see the user. There it is, ISV Data Curator as author, and this permission, they got created. Okay. So now I'm going to go back and look for the instructions to create the next user. And I'm going to open up create business analyst.json. Do the same thing of replacing the account numbers. Go to find, click on replace. And look for my account number. And you can see this user is also created an IAM as an author, but their permissions are different. The custom permission is pointing to the second permission set that we created, which is to restrict data source and data set. Okay. So I'm going to save this file, close out of it, come back to the workshop helper file, and look for the command to register the user, passing in this particular file. So all I need to do is copy the command and paste it into my terminal for register user. I'm getting a status 201, which means it successfully got created. And I can switch back to QuickSight to verify that it got created. So is the pace all right? Is it too slow, too fast? Let me know. Are you able to stay on track? Okay. So now I'm going to switch back into my presentation to see what is my next step. So we just finished creating the permissions policy. We created two policies for data curator and the business analyst. We registered the user, and that JSON file already had the permission policies attached. So the next step is to create the folders. So we're going to be creating 3 folders, and we'll share them with the appropriate users. So let's switch back into workshop helper file to see what are the things. Like I said, we do not have APIs for shared for folders yet, so we are going to have to do it within the console. So I'm already logged into the console. I'm going to copy the name of the first folder. This is called shared data sets. I'm going to copy this name from the workshop helper file. I'm going to switch back into QuickSight. So I'm right now on the management console. I'm going to click on QuickSight menu in the top left, and that's going to bring me to the main page. So here on the left-hand side, I have my folders and shared folders. I'm going to create these folders under shared folders. I click on shared folders, and you should see a new folder button. In case you don't see the button, make sure to refresh your screen, and you should be able to see it. I'm going to click on new folder, paste what I copied, and hit create. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share this folder with the two folks I created, the data curator and the business analyst. However, they both are going to have two different levels of permission to this folder. Data curator, who is going to create the data set, is going to have an owner permission to this folder because they get to create and add new objects to this folder. Business analysts, on the other hand, will have viewer permissions because they are going to be getting data from this from this folder. They're going to be accessing the objects that are moved into this folder. They're not going to be creating or adding new objects to the folder. So if I go to the far right corner, you should see 3 dots, and that extended menu should drop down with options. Share is the first option. And I'm going to start typing in ISV, and it's going to pull the 2 users that are created. So I'm going to pull up business analyst, and there should be the viewer, and I hit share. And then I'm going to add users. I'm going to look for ISV data curator, and they're going to be the owner. So I'm going to give the permission as owner and hit share. So now I have these 3 users. We have the data curator, who is the owner. We have the business analyst, who is the viewer. And as ISV admin, who is what I'm logged in as right now, I have ownership of all of these folders, no matter what. So I'm always going to be the owner here. Okay. So then I'm going to have to create a second folder. Folder number 2 is ISV test. I'm going to copy that ISV test, switch back to QuickSight, create a new folder, paste ISV test, hit create. So this folder is going to be shared with just one person, that will be the business analyst. So the business analyst, once they finish creating their analysis, they're going to make the analysis object available for the testing team. And testing team sandbox is ISV test. That is a folder. They have access only to this folder. So they'll come in and they'll look at the analysis that got created, make any recommendations, make any changes, pass it, fail it, whatever. And for that purpose, business analysts must have owner permissions on this ISV test folder because they're going to be adding new objects to that. So that is what I'm going to set up. Share with ISV business analyst, and they're going to be the owner. Okay. And the last folder I'm going to be creating will be ISV production. I'm going to switch back into my helper file, copying the name of the 3rd folder, coming back into QuickSight, and pasting that for my folder and create. So this folder, I'm going to be sharing it with the business user, but the business user is only going to be a viewer, not an owner. They're not going to be able to add anything. So I'll set that up here, share ISV business analyst as a viewer. As admin, I'm going to be the owner of that because I need to add new objects to it. I'm going to be managing the production rollout as admin, so that is why I have the access. So we are all set with the 3 folders. What is the next step? I'm going to switch back into my presentation here. So the last step here is to configure data source and share the data source. So we are going to be creating a MySQL data source and use it with the data curator. And here is where there are some step-by-step screenshots that I want to show you. In QuickSight, so far that we have been using it, we did not see a place where you can actually create a data source, right? So we saw data sets, we saw analysis, we saw dashboards, we saw folders, but nowhere did we see data source. Data source page becomes available only when you click on new data set. Only when you're ready to create a data set, the connectors show up, that page shows up. So this is the page that you're going to see once you click on new data set from data sets option. And as you can see, there are a lot of connectors available, and we are building on more connectors. For this workshop, we are going to be using MySQL database. So once you click on MySQL, MySQL icon here, it's going to show you this page, this screen where you will be able to provide the credentials. And all the credentials are available in the helper file. We'll go through that. But these are the things that you'll fill in, and you'll validate the connection. Immediately, it'll tell you whether you are able to connect or not. And then it'll show you, it'll save everything. And once you are able to open that up, you will see all these options. Because you are the admin, you'll have, and you are the one who owns this particular data source, you'll have the ability to delete it, and you can edit in case you want to change the credentials and whatnot, and you can share the data source. Of course, you can also create a data set. However, me being an admin, I'm not really familiar with your database. I'm not really familiar which tables to join and what are the referential integrity fields that I need to use. So I'm not really familiar with your schema, so I'm not going to be creating any data sets. All that I'm going to be doing is share the data source with the curator, data curator. And I'm going to give that person user permission and not owner permission, because I do not want them to change any of the credentials here. Okay, so this is what we are going to be doing now. Let's switch back to QuickSight, navigate to data sets, and find the button for new data set. And here is all the connectors. And if you scroll down all the way to the end, you should see a section called From Existing Data Sources. So these are the data source connections that already got built. And these are the data source connections that are that were built as part of the sample, right? So somebody has created it, QuickSight team has created it. All of these are going off of S3, as you can tell. One is a sales pipeline, one is business review, different types of data sources, right? So the moment you create a data source, it is going to appear in this list from existing data sources, okay? And you'll be able to keep recreating them. And each one of these will have their own unique ID, and that is going to come in handy, and we'll talk about that a little later. All right, so we are going to be connecting to a MySQL database. So I'm going to look for MySQL connector here, and here it is. And this is what my credentials page is going to look for. I'm going to call this employee data. And I'm going to now switch back to my admin workshop helper file and look for the values that I need to populate the screen. So all right, I'm going to get the data source name. I'm going to copy the data source name from here that says employee DB, which is what I'm going to paste here. Connection type, I'm going to choose public. And in your environment, you may have it private, you may have it within a VPC, and you will secure it using the VPC connections. But for the workshop purposes, we are making it public. And this is a DB server we are going to connect to. And for this, exclusively for this workshop, I've made this database publicly available and accessible for everybody. And this is the server endpoint. And the port is 3306 for MySQL. Database name is going to be HR, capital H, capital R. For username, I'm going to switch back to my helper file. Look for the master username. It is ISV admin, all one word. And then the password is password for bank, password with a capital P, for bank. and I click on Validate Connection.
Padmaja, hi, this is Raji. Can you change the port to 3306, please?
Oh, yes, thank you. So please don't make the typo that I made. Change the port to 3306, and it validated right away. Okay, so I'm going to not hit the Create Data Source button at this point. Instead, I'm going to navigate to the top and X out, close out of this, because like I said before, I am not going to build any data sets because I do not know the schema. And if I scroll down, I should be able to see, if you don't see it yet, refresh your screen, and you should see the employee database data source that we created. What happened? I made something, didn't work. Let me recreate this again. So sorry, I made a mistake. You do need to press the click Create Data Source button, but you don't have to proceed further in this step where you are going to create your database, create your tables and proceeding there. So let's click on the X out of this one. In case you also did the same thing that I did, you may want to re-enter your credentials and then hit Create Data Source. So I'm going to refresh the screen again, and my data source got created. I'll pause here so everybody can catch up. So now I want to share this data source that I created. I click on Employee DB data source, and I select Share Data Source option. And from this model, I'm selecting Invite Users. And I'm going to be inviting Data Curator. And I want to give them user permission and not owner permission, because I don't want them to be messing up with the credentials. They're only going to be using it, and share. Good. So with that, coming back to the main portal page by clicking on QuickSight icon, I see that I have my folders, the 3 folders that I got created. I have all the users I got created. I have the data source that I got created. So let me switch back to my presentation here. With that, we have completed the 3 labs, and that is our module 1. So why don't we take a 5-minute break here, and we'll come back and start with module 2. Okay. The time now is about 1:26. I'm sorry. What is the time? 12:26. My time, Eastern time, and we'll take about 5 minutes break. 12:30. So what we did in the last lab was basically creating the permissions policy, setting up the user to have restricted access. We registered the 2 authors, we created their folders, and we connected to a MySQL database for employee database. So I'm assuming everybody got connected okay, and no one had any failure in your SQL connection. If you did, please make sure to reach out to our team, and we'll be able to help you. Okay, so next module, we are going to be curating this data now that we have the data source set up, and then the business analyst is going to come in and build the analysis, and the admin is going to deploy the dashboard. So those are the three steps we are going to be covering here. And those are a little bit, it could be kind of easy because we are now going to launch into the console. We're going to stay with the QuickSight console for a little bit, doing data prep in QuickSight, learning about table joins, and getting an overview of analysis and visualization. However, I want to warn you, this is not going to go too deep into the visualization side of it. We have an awesome workshop coming up next week, next Wednesday. My colleague Sapna Maheshwari is going to be leading that on how to, this is focused on business users. So there is a 101 and 201 portions of that workshop where you can really learn all the features inside out and all the new features that is getting released as well of things that you can do within QuickSight. So, but in this workshop, I'm going to keep it very, very minimal because our focus is on the admin side of it. So the first two steps will be, we'll be using two different personas, right? The first time we are going to be taking the persona of a data curator who can prep the data in QuickSight, do all the table joins, and make the data set available. And then we'll log in as business analyst, build all the visualization and the analysis, and then hand it over to the admin. So the admin then, finally, we take the persona of the admin and do the dashboard automation, which is achieved through what's called templates, right? So as usual, let's go through some of the step-by-step screenshots of what is involved in each one of these, right? These are this kind of the map that tells you what each person is going to do. So when I log in as a data curator, what am I going to do? When I log in as business analyst, and when I log in as ISV admin, right? So what is involved in creating a data set? So how do you go about it? So the data source is provisioned, and the data curator is going to access that provisioned data source. When they log in, they're going to see almost the same screen that we have been seeing as an administrator. But when they click on new data set, the screen that they see is going to be slightly different. They are no longer going to be able to see all the connectors that we were able to see as administrator, because that is the restriction we applied. We said they cannot create or update any data source. So as a result, they do not have it. They only have access to existing data sources that somebody else had configured for them. So in this case, we configured the employee DB data source for them, and they'll be able to access that. So when they click on employee data, this is how it is going to show up for them. If you recall, when we used it as an admin in the admin role, we had the ability to delete the data source. We had the ability to edit it and share it. They do not have any of that permission. They can only create data set out of this data source. So then they go in, they see this list of tables. They start building their query, or either using custom SQL or using the console. So custom SQL is, I think most of us are familiar with how to do that. So we won't be demonstrating that here in the workshop, but we'll show you how we can set up table joins, hierarchical joins, and things like that within the console. So when you select a table, it's going to ask you whether you want to import into Spice or you want to directly query your data. So this is another feature our customers have found very, very helpful. Typically, when we have dashboards, we have a large number of users hitting your database, and we really don't want to get that load on against our database. And to support that, QuickSight offers you something called Spice, which is an in-memory caching mechanism. So it refreshes data from your database, and we manage all the capacity behind the scenes for Spice, no matter how your data volume is, how many people are hitting the dashboards. Based on that, it will scale up or scale down, and you don't have to touch anything. It does refresh on a certain frequency, and we are aiming to increase the frequency, refresh frequency to 15 minutes by the end of this year. So, or you could directly choose to query your data. So you have both the options available. And that is what this person is going to configure. They'll accept Spice for quicker analysis, and then start to edit or preview the data. So when they hit edit or preview data, it's going to land them in the data prep screen. This is how that screen is going to look. So you'll have on the left-hand side, you'll have the list of all the field columns. You have the option to switch. If you change your mind, I want to query directly, you can change your mind after you can come here. You also have the ability to add new calculated fields, any kind of manipulations you want to do against the fields that you're bringing in. And it augments with SageMaker. So we are making machine learning much more easily accessible for many people across the board. So quick access to SageMaker, integration with SageMaker is possible. On the right-hand side, the screen is split into two. The bottom portion shows you the preview of the data, and the top portion gives you a graphical UI of all the tables that you're going to be joining, right? So when you want to join, what you're going to do is click on Add Data link at the top, and it's going to show you the list of your tables. You'll click which other table you want to join with this table, and it'll bring it in. So now the joins need to be configured. It is showing as red. So when you click on either one of those red circles, in the bottom pane, you're going to see the join configuration. And depending on what column it is that you need to join, you'll pick those columns from within the two tables and apply. That is going to create the join. So you see the join, now it is blue in color. If you want to build a hierarchical schema, your table is structured in a hierarchical way, and you want to build a snowflake schema model, that is totally possible. You'll follow the same step for adding data and bringing in the new table. By default, it's going to just try to be on the same level as the employees. But then you want it to get connected to the departments table. So in that case, all you need to do is drag this location table and drop it on departments. And I'll show you how to achieve that. So that way you can build your schema, hierarchical schemas, modeling in this way. Okay. So the join and everything else works the same. Once you're happy with what you have built, you save your data set. Here it is not auto-save, so you have to manually save it. If you don't save it, it's not going to get saved. It's as simple as that. So once you save it, then you want to share this with your business analyst. That's the whole reason why we are doing this, right? So we want to share it with the data curator. And the way that we are going to do it is we'll move this asset into shared datasets folder. Okay. So these are all the steps we are going to follow for this particular lab. So let us do this. On page 51 of your PDF, I have the instructions. I'm going to log into QuickSight. Actually, I'm going to open, first of all, I'm going to open an browser in incognito mode. Okay. And let me try this. I'm going to try this, if this is going to work for you also or not. I'm going to type in QuickSight in my incognito browser. Where did it go? So quicksite.aws.amazon.com. And I'm going to grab my account name from my helper file. So I'm going to navigate over to my helper file that is in Cloud9. At the very top, I have my QuickSight account name that says admin workshop - my account number. I'm going to put that in there. Come back to my incognito browser window, put that account name, and hit continue. And I'm going to log in as ISV data curator and grab the password, which is also the same password for all three users, password 1band with a capital P, and sign in. If this does not work for you, you can follow the method that we have been following. You can come through the IAM AWS console and then look for QuickSight and come in from there. So is everybody in here? Pause for a bit. So what I did was I opened a browser in incognito mode. I went directly to quicksite.aws.amazon.com. It asked me for the QuickSight account. I grabbed it from my workshop helper file. It is at the very top. And then I logged in as ISV data curator and provided the password. And that is how I'm here on this page. So if I click on the user icon in the far right, I will see all the options, but I would not see the option that says Manage QuickSight. So that is what tells me I'm not an admin user on this account. The rest of the menu options look somewhat similar. I have the data sets, I have the analysis, dashboards, shared folders, and my folders. Let me look at the shared folders. Sure enough, I have access to shared data sets because I'm the data curator. If you recall, I was given permission only to share data sets because I want to add data set objects into this folder for the business analyst to pick up. So I only have access to this folder. So far, no data sets have been created. That's why I'm here to create the data set. So let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to click on New Data Set. And as we saw before, I don't have access to any of the other connectors, but I do have access to the data source that got provisioned for me. And I'm going to hit on Employee Database. And as we saw before, there's no other options available except to create a data set. And that's because of the permission restrictions I have. So I'm going to start with Employees Table. I'm going to select and make sure it is in Spice. And I'm going to hit Edit Preview Data. Okay. Now I want to build my join. I'm going to start joining with other tables. So I'm going to hit Add Data at the top. So even before I do that, let me make sure I save this, right? So I'm going to switch back into my workshop helper file and find module 2, lab 1, create dataset section that is under line 65 there. And I'm going to copy the name for the dataset, which is in line 69, name of the dataset. I'm going to copy that, come to my incognito window, paste it here, and hit save. When I hit save, it's going to take me back to my main page. Let me refresh. So here's my data set. I'll click on the data set and edit data set again. We'll go through those options a little later when we come back to sharing. So now I've opened my data set here. I have it saved as it is shown above. Now I want to add additional data. So I'm clicking on Add Data. This time I'm going to bring in Jobs Table and hit Select. In order to join, right now they are not joined. I'm going to click on the red dot, red circle, and it's going to show me both the tables, Employees and Jobs Table for the join clause. And I'm going to look for Job ID. Job ID is the field that I'm going to join on and apply. So if you scroll to the right of your preview, you should see job title and everything related to the job table. And also you can see those columns in the left panel. If you scroll down, you should see the jobs table columns here, okay? Now I'm going to add 2 more tables just to demonstrate the ability for us to build hierarchical model. So the next table I'm going to join is departments. I'm going to select. Once again, set up the join between employees and departments table using department ID. Apply the join. And I should see department name on the left side and department name in my preview window as well. Okay. So I'll add 1 more. This time I'm going to add locations table. And you can if you click on the red circle, you can say there is no way to join locations with employees, right? So location needs to be joined with department table. So what I'm going to do is hover over locations, and it's going to give me, a handle that I can grab and drop the locations icon into departments. So that changes the orientation here. And now locations and departments are at the same level. I can go ahead and join them using location ID. I'm going to add one more data. So click add data. This time I'm going to bring countries. So I'm going to grab countries and drop it onto location, because that is how those this hierarchy is set up. It's departments, locations, countries, and then region. So I'm going to set up the join between locations and country on using country ID. And I keep zooming in order to fit all the tables here. So I've zoomed in some more. I'm going to add one more data for region. I'm doing the same thing, dragging region and dropping it on country. And joining it on region ID. So I'm happy now with the way that I have created this data set. And I'm going to save. So I'll pause here for you to catch up. So we built a join between, started with employees table, joined first with jobs table. Based on job ID, we applied join criteria. And then we added departments, joined employees with departments using department ID. And then on departments, we started snowflaking it out using locations table first. And then under locations, we added countries. And then under countries, we added region. So with that, we are done with the data prep. We saved it. We came back out. Now I'm going to share it with the business analyst. So a business analyst can pick up. So what I'm going to do is navigate over to the far right against this employee locations data set and pull up the extended menu attribute there. And it shows me add to folder as an option. And that is what I'm going to pick. I'm going to drop this into the shared folders. And under shared folders, I have shared datasets folder that I'm going to drop this into. I'm going to click add and share. So now if I go to shared folders and select shared datasets, I'm going to make sure that it is moved there. I am the owner, and this dataset is going off of Spice. That's what it's telling me. Okay. So now I'm going to switch back into my presentation. And we just finished lab 1. We created the data set, we shared it with the shared data set, we moved it to shared data set. So next module is to create the analysis. So now we are going to have to log in as a business analyst who will be accessing the provisioned data set. So they'll navigate over to shared folders, find the provisioned data set, click on that data set, and they're going to be able to see some options here that says create analysis. Right? Those are the only options they'll have because we set their permissions in that way. We said that they will not have access to updating or creating any data set. So they can only use the data set. So now, when they click on create analysis, it's going to land them in the analysis page. This is how QuickSight visualization page looks like. On the left-hand side, you have a bunch of menu options, left menu options, and in the top, you have the ability to add new visual, add new insights, and save and print and share. And then in the main area here is split into the left panel where you have the list of all the columns and the visualization widgets, different visualization types. And it usually begins with showing you an autograph, which means you just need to click on a particular field or set of fields, and QuickSight will figure out what is the best visualization that this data set can hold. So that's what autograph means. And you can change that to any other visual type just by clicking on any of these. It's as simple as that. So if we create the very first visual we are going to create is going to be count of records by region. Like I said, I'm going to keep it very simple. It is not a demonstration of QuickSight's visualization features. This workshop is not. And if you are interested, please attend the one that's happening next week. It's going to be really awesome. And so I create the first visual. It automatically produces a bar chart like this for me. And then I add a new visual to add one more chart. That's a donut chart. That will be count of employees by department. Okay, those are the two things I'm going to create. And with that, so one thing about visualization analysis is that it always has an auto save on. So you don't have to really worry about it. We'll just make sure that the name looks the same. And we go back to the main menu and add this one to the ISV test folder. So now the business analyst is done with their work. They have finished their analysis, they have built the visualizations. Now it needs to go through QA approval, so they're moving it into test for the testing team to work on. So that's what we are going to do next. And we'll follow the instructions, the workshop helper file. So I'm going to go to the helper file. And then I'm going to access the section, module 2, lab 2, build analysis. So it says, go to open incognito browser and log in as ISV business analyst and password, and move the analysis to ISV test. So let's do that. I'm going to look for my incognito browser. I'm going to sign out. I'm actually signed in as data curator here. I'm going to sign out of the data curator persona. So it is showing me the QuickSight account name that I already put in for data curator. So I'm good there. I just need to log in as ISV business analyst and put the password in and sign in. So now I am the business analyst persona here. And as you can see, I'm not the admin, so I don't have access to manage QuickSight option. And let me start with the folders. What do I have permissions to? This is the first time I'm logging in as business user. And these are the list of folders I have access to. If you recall, the administrator gave permissions to the business analyst as a viewer permission for shared dataset, owner permission for ISV test, and viewer permission on ISV production. So we have the owner permission on ISV test, so we can add the analysis objects that we are going to be building. Okay. So let's go to shared dataset. And here is our dataset that we are going to access. So it says the owner is not me, owner is others, right? So I click on dataset, and you can see all the other options that the data curator was able to see. We don't have that here. So the data curator had ability to apply row level security, column level security against this dataset, and also share the dataset, verify SPICE refresh happened or not, or kick off manual SPICE refresh. All those features are available for the data curator because they had that permission on their data set. This user does not have all those permissions. They only have the ability to create analysis out of this data set. I'm going to hit create analysis. And here I've landed in this. So like I said before, I'm not going to go over all of that again. I'm going to build my very first visual, which will be count by, I think it was departments or regions. So let me look for region. So what I'm doing here is using the search box to pick the region. And all I needed to do was just select region. It automatically pulled up the chart. So I'm happy with this. I'm not going to change anything else. I'm going to hit add visual, click on the plus button at the top, add visual. And this time I'm going to pick department name. And I don't like this bar chart again. I'm going to change it into donut. So under the visual types, I'm going to click on donut chart. That is the fourth one on the first row. And here's my department name. Okay, so this is all I want to do with this report. I don't want to spend too much time building my visualization. It is already saved. I'm going to go back. So now I have this analysis here. I'm now ready to share it with my QA team. So clicking on the extended menu option here and selecting add to folder. I'm going to open up shared folders and move it into ISV test. And add and share. So it tells me one item was added. Let me go and make sure that it really got added. There it is, the analysis. Okay. With that, I'm done with my incognito mode browsers. I'm going to log out. Now, I just realized I did not show you some of the capabilities of the permissions that the data curator had. So I'm going to just log in and show that to you real quick. So in the data set that we created, I wanted to review these options. So this is what I was mentioning. So as a persona who has permissions to access the data set, since you are the owner of the data set, you have all these different capabilities. You can kick off a manual refresh of your SPICE data source, or you can also schedule that refresh on a way that, whenever it makes sense. And if there is a failure in any refresh that's happening, SPICE refresh that's happening, it will also automatically send email. So you can, configure that for yourself. In addition, you also see these two options. You may not be able to see the column level security, but I think it may not be rolled out yet. But we have this capability to implement row level as well as column level security. So row level security is basically a where clause that you apply, and it works really very simple. You create a data set of permissions. Say, for example, you want finance department, and these are the finance group, and these are the individuals, and this is the field that I want to, department name is the field I want to filter on, and you just build that list up and apply that against your data set. When you say row level security, here is the data set you'll pick, whichever data set you have, and you say whether you want to give access or not, grant access to the data set or not. And at runtime, it will apply the where clause and restrict the data set. Column level security, on the other hand, it chooses which column that you want to give permissions to who. So for example, say I want to restrict permission. Right now, everybody can see the field called salary. I can say I only want data curator to see or business analyst to see. So I can restrict who gets to see those column level security. So that's what I wanted to show. I'm good. I'm going to sign out, close this browser. So what is my next step? So I'm coming back to my presentation here. I finished my lab 1, finished my lab 2, which is creating data set and creating analysis. Now it's time for admin to create the dashboard, deploy the dashboard. Like I said, the business analyst could have deployed the dashboard from within the console. That is within their capability. But we wanted to demonstrate how to do it using APIs, and that's why we are choosing this route. So there are a couple of different things the ISV admin is going to do. I want to actually go through the concepts behind what we are covering in this portion of the lab. So dashboard automation, or programmatically deploying dashboards, is done using a concept called templates. So templates are nothing but QuickSight entities, just like dataset, data sources, analysis. Template is also another entity. What it does is it encapsulates the metadata for the analysis. So what does it really mean? Why is it important? What it allows you to do right now, like I said before, there are various tasks in QuickSight that you can carry out using APIs, but there are certain that you cannot, and creating analysis is one of them. It has to happen within the console, because that is where you have the rich set of UI, visual types, you get to do computations, you get to add machine learning insights, and all kinds of visual things. So those cannot be done via API or via code. So that has to, has to have somebody sit there in front of, sit there and create these manually. However, because of the capability of template, which encapsulate the metadata from within the analysis, in the life cycle of building a dashboard, you only need to build that visual analysis once in the entire life cycle. One person can sit there and do the visualization, think through all the ways that that's best, and follows the best practice of visualization requirements, and they can build that, and template will be able to capture the metadata of that analysis. And when you are ready to propagate it to your higher environments, you don't have to sit and create analysis. You just need to use this template. So that makes it a lot more powerful. That makes it much more automated. So only in a dev environment, you have somebody sitting there and creating analysis. In any of the higher environments, no one is spending that time to create it. So your workload is cut short so much. And one thing to note is that a template is not accessible on the console. Right now, it is only via APIs. Okay. So how do actually they help? Let me, give a little bit more. So the templates, they'll add a layer of abstraction through what is called dataset placeholders, and I will talk more about it. So like I said, the analysis needs to be created on the console just once during the dashboard lifecycle. So now, in our case, what did we do? We created a dev dataset. So assuming that we are going off of development instance of our data source, we created a dataset and we created an analysis. So what templates do is they combine the dev dataset and the dev analysis using what's called the unique ID that is called ARNs. So that whenever you create a data set, whenever you create any object, there is a unique ID number that gets created called Amazon resource number. And that ARN is what template is requiring. And these are the two information you have to provide to create a template, and it will capture the metadata of the analysis. And that metadata is going to be used to build the dashboard. However, you have the option. The dashboard, on the other hand, the inputs that the dashboard takes is a templates ARN and a dataset ARN, right? So what this decoupling allows you to do is the dashboard, which is pushed into a production environment, say for example, can still use the analysis metadata that is captured by the template, but it can provide its own data set so that the analysis can use the production data. Why is this important? So the example scenario where this might be important is in a very highly regulated industries. There are strict segregation between who can access production data, right? And with GDPR and CCPA, there is even more control about who within the company can access even data beyond dev or stage or QA environments. So in a typical case, the BI developers and database analysts have permissions to access dev dataset. So they can go ahead and create the dataset, create the analysis, and so on. But only DevOps and security staff have access to production dataset. So even they cannot sit there and write queries. So they need to be able to have a scalable mechanism for them to capture all the work that is being done in the dev environment. So we have APIs that allow you to describe a data set, describe a data source. And what this API command does is it spits out a JSON of the description. So for example, we created MySQL data source. We provided all the parameters to connect the connection credentials and everything. If we went to the Cloud9 console, we issued the command that says describe data set and provide all the input parameters. And it's going to generate a JSON in a format that you can edit. So what you can typically do is make a copy of that data set, a copy of the JSON file, edit it to point to production data set, and you're good to go, right? And that point of time, your analysis can also point to that production data source. Your data set can also point to the production data source, and you don't have to change anything else. And taking it furthermore, you can parameterize the whole thing. You can put variables in there so that automatically when set of all these analysis objects and dataset objects are moved from one environment to another, automatically the variables will get replaced and it will point to the corresponding data set for that environment. If it is in staging, it can point to the staging database. If it is UAT, it can point to UAT database and so on. Once the data set is pushed to the dashboard, we can also restrict permissions, right? So we can restrict permissions for the customer readers to access which dashboard they have permissions to look. And then if there are authors from the customer side, we can restrict them to access only the production data set, right? So this is what we alluded to when we introduced the personas up front at the beginning of the workshop today. So these are all the example scenarios that supports. So what are the steps? To reiterate, step one is to create the data set source and create a data set. We have two different APIs that are helpful for that. You can describe a particular data source. Say, for example, you create a data source in dev, you describe the dev data source, you copy it as a different file name, make the changes to the connection credentials, and create the data source using that JSON file, and it gets created in the new environment. Same thing goes for data set. So when you create a data source, it passes the data source ARN, and that is what is used within the data set. Step two, once the data set is created, it also generates its own data set ARN that will be used within the analysis. We did all of this in the console, so it was kind of transparent for us. We just picked the data source, we just selected the data set, we just went and created the analysis. Behind the scenes, this is what is happening. It's connecting these objects together using the ARN. And then when it's time for us to create the template, we find out what is the analysis ARN of this analysis object. We pass it to the template. And this will also contain the dataset ARN, and which will pass to the template. So template requires both analysis ARN and dataset ARN, and it will take that input and create the template. And it will generate its own ARN. And the dashboard, create dashboard API will accept template ARN and will accept a dataset ARN, right? So template ARN is the one that's going to define the structure of the visualization and what charts that go in, and the dataset is going to point to whichever dataset that the dashboard needs to access. So there are more resources that you can learn more about the APIs and content building, automating, and things like that, and also a whole list of API references here, all related to pertaining to data that I've provided. So in the workshop, what are we going to do? So we have already done step one and step two. We have created the data source, we have created the data set, we have created the analysis. We need to be creating the template, and we need to be creating the dashboard. And also, we need to be creating a production data set that needs to be associated with that dashboard. So that's what we are going to do. So we'll first create a production data set in the lab, which will happen within the console, QuickSight console. Then we'll switch to Cloud9 because template can be created only using the API. We'll capture what is the dataset ARN. We'll capture the analysis ARN. We'll also capture the dataset ARN for the production dataset. And then we'll build the template. So once the template is built, we'll capture the template ARN and then issue the create dashboard command. When we give the create dashboard command, we'll pass it the production dataset ARN to the dashboard. So it may be a little complicated while I'm saying all this, but we'll take it slow. We'll go step by step, okay? So here's where I'm laying out the same steps that I walked you through just in the last slide. I'm going to log into QuickSight, create the certified dataset, and then I'll add it to production folder because I want this dataset to be accessible by my customer's author. The customer's author should be able to access that. I will then go to Cloud9 and create the template using the dev dataset and issue the create dashboard command for the certified dataset. And finally, I'll come to QuickSight and share the dashboard to ISV production folder. Okay. So this is what I'm going to do. Let's follow the instruction on the helper file. I'm going to switch back to Cloud9, where my helper file is here. Navigate to the section Module 2, Lab 3. Creating the production dataset. I'm going to log in as ISV admin and click on my dataset and use duplicate dataset and name it this one. So I'm going to copy the name of the dataset in line number 87. It says employee job locations dataset dash certified. Okay. So let me go find my QuickSight. So I'm already logged in as admin. If you have not logged in, make sure to log in now. I'll pause for a bit. Okay, so now I'm going to go into datasets. Actually, this got shared here. Here's my dataset. So assuming, I'm not going through all the, hassles of creating a production data source, creating a data set from the production side. I'm just keeping things very simple. I'm going to pretend that duplicate data set is going to be actually my certified data set, right? I'm going to hit on duplicate data set, and I'm going to paste the name I copied, employee job locations dataset dash certified, and hit duplicate. So it should be under my data sets now. So I see the employee job locations dataset certified. I'm now going to move it, add it to the folder under ISV production. So navigating to the far right, again, the certified dataset, I click on the menu option, add to folder. I'm going to navigate to ISV production folder and add and share. Okay, I'm done with my production dataset now. The next step is going to happen on Cloud9. First, I'm going to have to let me actually pull up the screen. So before I execute a template, create template command, I need two input values, right? One, I need the dataset ARN, and another one, I need the analysis ARN. So I'm going to issue a CLI command that helps me get this these two ARNs. While I'm doing the dataset ARN, I'm also going to take the opportunity to capture the dataset ARN for the production dataset I just created. Okay, so that is the step I'm here right now. So in line number 94, I have the command that says AWS QuickSight list datasets for my account. So I'm going to copy that, go back to my terminal. I'm going to issue a clear command to clear off my terminal there and paste. So I'm going to list all the data sets in this account. And it is quite a bunch, right? We know, we saw that we had quite a bunch of data sources and data sets from the sample, not just the 2 that we created. So I'm going to have to scroll through and locate mine. So I found my employee job locations data set certified. So I'm going to make this bigger. So here is my ARN for that. I'm going to copy that ARN. And I have a placeholder, right underneath on the workshop helper file that says original dataset ARN, copy and paste, and certified dataset ARN, copy and paste. So I'm going to copy and paste for the certified dataset ARN. This is a certified. So make sure you're putting it in the right place, right? You don't want to mix it up. And now I'm going to look for my original dataset, ARN, for employees, employee job locations dataset. Here is my original. I'm going to copy the ARN for that. Coming back into my workshop helper file, I'm going to paste it under original dataset ARN. So I now have original dataset ARN, certified dataset ARN, both. I also have put another placeholder here that is certified dataset ID. So the ID of the certified dataset. This is needed for something down the line. While we are here, I thought we'll just capture that one as well. So let me actually go back to look for my certified dataset. Here it is. And I'm going to capture the dataset ID value and put that in here. Okay, pause for a bit so you can catch up. So what I did was first executed the command to list all the data sets from line number 94. It showed me a whole bunch of lists. From that list, I picked out the ARN for my original data set that is named employee job locations data set. And then I captured the ARN for my certified data set that is named employee job locations data set dash certified. I also captured the dataset ID for the certified dataset. That's what I've done. And I captured and pasted all of these in my workshop helper file under the heading capture dataset ARN. Okay. So now I'm going to go to my terminal and hit clear. And I'm on to my next step. What I've done now is I've gotten the dataset ARN for the dev data source, and I've got the dataset ARN for the production dataset that I just created, right? What I call production, which is certified dataset. This is what I've done. Now I need the analysis ARN because I'm going to now issue the create template. The create template is only going to use the original dataset ARN and the analysis ARN. That is what I need, analysis ARN. So let me go back to Cloud9. And under the section that says capture analysis ARN, I have the command that says list analysis. Copy that and paste it into my terminal. And there are quite a bunch of analysis, as we saw earlier. And I'm going to look for mine. Here is my employee job locations dataset analysis. I'm going to copy the ARN. Okay. Make sure that you're copying the whole thing. I'll pause a little bit. I'm going ahead and clearing my terminal. So now I am ready. I'm ready with my dataset ARN. I have my analysis ARN. I'm ready to issue the create template command. So let me go ahead back to my helper file, create template section. It says upload file, create template.json, open it and paste your account and save. Replace the dataset ARN placeholder with the original dataset and replace the analysis ARN placeholder with the analysis ARN, and then execute the command for create template, passing the input file for create template JSON. And then you capture the template ARN, the template that gets created. Okay, so that's a whole list. Let me first start with the first step, which is uploading the JSON file for template. I've already uploaded it. I'm going to open it. As usual, I need to change my account number. So let me go ahead and look for my account number, copy it, and make sure I replace account numbers everywhere. Okay, so there are two places I need to replace my account number with. And then now next I need to replace the analysis ARN. If you can see in line number 21 is the placeholder. We need to put the actual ARN that we captured. So I'm going to navigate over to my helper file, look for my analysis ARN that I copied and stored here. Here is my analysis ARN. Going to template JSON and placing it there. And I just seem to have like double quotes. So I'm going to remove that and make it double quotes. And next final thing I have to do is change the dataset ARN. This is the original dataset that I have to copy. So let me go back to helper file, look for the original dataset ARN, copy, and paste it here. All right. So what are the things we did? So let's actually look at this JSON file. What is it doing? So it's creating the template ID, it's creating the template name, it's giving permission to ISV admin to create the template, to describe the template. So all permissions related to templates, we are giving that user the permission to do that. And then source entity segment is the one that associates the analysis with the data set. Right? So this is where the magic happens. So it takes the analysis and then it generates a template, and that template will contain the metadata of the analysis, and the analysis will use the dataset references provided here. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this. Close out of this JSON. Coming back to my helper file, I'm going to look for the command to create the template. And paste that command in my terminal. And there it created. It came back with a status 202. That means it created. It says creation in progress. Just takes a little bit to create, and that's it. So I have the ARN for the template. I'm going to copy that ARN from the output and paste it in my create template, because I need this to create my dashboard. So the dashboard, like I mentioned before here, the dashboard accepts template ARN and it accepts the production dataset ARN. So those are the two ARNs it needs. So that is the reason why we are capturing that. Good, I'll pause here for a minute for everybody to catch up. We're almost there. Okay, so now we are now ready to deploy the dashboard. I'm scrolling down to this section where it says deploy dashboard. You upload the file for create dashboard JSON. We have already uploaded it. we open it and replace the account and save, AWS account and save. Then we are going to replace two more things. We are going to replace the dataset ARN with certified dataset ARN. We're going to replace the template ARN with the template ARN that we just copied, and then execute the command for create dashboard. Okay, let's do that. Let's go find the JSON file, create dashboard. Oh, what is it? No, create template, right? Is it template? No, create dashboard. Create dashboard JSON. We already created the template. We have the create dashboard JSON. And let's copy the account number. Make sure the account numbers are replaced with your account number. I think there are two places where you have to do that. And what it's doing is giving permissions to the ISV admin to be able to describe, give the whole set of permissions to the dashboard. That's what it is. And then in the source entity, you have the source template it is asking for. It is and asking for the dataset references. So in line number 25 for the dataset ARN, I'm going to paste the certified dataset ARN from the helper file. So I'm going to go to the helper file, look for my certified dataset ARN, and paste it here in line number 25 of create dashboard JSON. And the next thing I need to do is change the ARN for template. That's on line number 28. So that's a source template ARN that I need to change. So I'm switching back to the helper file, looking for my template ARN that I just copied and pasted here. Copying it, coming back to create dashboard. I'm going to paste it here. So, and then beneath that, you see there are other dashboard features that we have disabled, right? We have disabled ad hoc filtering, we have disabled export to CSV options and other kind of controls. So I'm just showing this to demonstrate you can actually create a dashboard even from within the API. Some of the features that you have exposed on the console is also available here. Okay, so we have changed the account numbers in two different places. We have replaced dataset ARN with the certified dataset ARN, and we have replaced the template ARN with the template ARN that we just copied. Right, I'm going to go save, close out of create dashboard. Coming back to my helper file, I'm going to look for the command to create the dashboard. That's in line number 129. And paste it here, paste it in the terminal. So it came back fairly quickly. It created, I got a status 202, and I have the ARN, I have dashboard ID. Okay, so the next step is to share the dashboard, and this one is going to happen from within QuickSight console. So I'll switch to the QuickSight console. I'm still logged in as ISV admin. That is what I want to be, and go to dashboards. So here's my dashboard. So let me actually pause here. I hope people got caught up with their dashboard creation. Okay. So let me go ahead and share this dashboard. Add the folder. So I click on the extended menu, and let me actually click on the dashboard itself to see whether it came through. We created two visualization here by region and by department name, and I'm able to see the data. So let me go back. Go to dashboards, click on the extended menu option, add the folder, And I'm going to add this to ISV production folder, because that is where I'm going to be accessing this in order to allow access to other users, customer users. I'm going to add and share. I'm done with that. Okay. So this is how we programmatically deploy dashboards. So with that, we end the module 2. Right. So we finished creating the data set. We added it to a production folder. We created the template using the dev data set, created the dashboard using the certified data set, and finally moved the dashboard to ISV production. Any questions? Anything you want to share here?
Padmaja, this is Scott. There's a question, are equivalent commands available for Terraform?
Terraform is equivalent to CloudFormation. So this is not the equivalent comparison. If you're looking for Terraform, you're probably looking at commands within CloudFormation. So the CLI commands that we have been using, the REST APIs we have been using, are all pertaining to QuickSight, and we have various different language support. So we have SDKs for Java, .NET, C#, Python, JavaScript. You can use all these APIs from within those programming languages, not necessarily within Terraform. We do have some integration going on with CloudFormation for manipulating various different resources within QuickSight, and that's going to be the priority next year.
It is in the roadmap for Q4.
Oh, Q4. Okay. Thanks. Okay, so we'll then move on to the next module. The final module here is to implement multi-tenancy and how do we implement client segregation, right? So there are multiple different pieces that are involved in implementing multi-tenancy. So the first one is to segregate your users, and that is achieved through namespaces, and that's what we are going to be doing here in this portion of the lab, in this module. And another one is to isolate your data set, and that is what we saw in the templates, where we created a certified data set for just the customer, where you get to control what the customer sees, right? So you can do that using templates. You can also do using row-level security, where you can apply the where clause. Say, for example, all your tenants is in one database table, and you can apply using the tenant ID or customer ID field. You can restrict who gets access to what. In an enterprise scenario, that also goes the same. Like you could restrict people pertaining to a particular department, or a business unit can have their own namespace, right? And those are possible. Optionally, you could also have database level segregation, which you might already currently have, and that's a model where you have a single database for each client. That is totally possible. That is supported. And if you want even more harder separation between your tenants, you can have separate AWS accounts. So it's not that there is just one single way or one single thing is going to help you with multi-tenancy. It is a combination of a set of things, and it doesn't necessarily have to use all exact things here. You could mix and match depending on what your particular use case is. So then let's talk about what is namespaces, because that is what we are going to be handling in this module. So far we have been creating our authors and admins, and we have not created any customers yet. So what we have done is, in QuickSight, we have a QuickSight account that we initially created, and that was called admin workshop - our account name, and that is a QuickSight account. And in that account, we created our users. So when we create users in that way, they get created in what is called the default namespace. So this is the entire universe within that QuickSight account that these users and we have created have access to. So when I typed in ISV admin or whatever, you saw the list of ISV business user, ISV curator, everybody come up in this list. And that is what is possible because I'm in that universe with all these existing with all these other users. So I can see their email IDs, I can share things with them. And that's helpful. However, when you are working within an environment which requires user segregation, that is not really a good thing because now your customer user is going to get all mixed up with your own users, or multiple customers users are going to be getting mixed up. So that is where namespaces come in handy. Okay, so when we create a namespace, what we allow doing is creating a simple domain within which the users can exist for that particular customer, right? While the authors and admins who are in the default can have access to their universe, the customer can have access only within their universe of namespace, whatever we name that namespace to be. So that when they are going around sharing something, when they type in a number, say John Smith, they're only seeing John Smith of their company and not John Smith from some other company. Okay, so that's what namespaces allow you to do. And right now, namespaces, you cannot access it from within the console. You can only do it using the API. So that's what we are going to carry out in this lab. We'll create the namespace for the customer. We'll register. There are 2 customer users that we still have not registered in QuickSight yet. So we'll register them, but we'll register them within this namespace. And then, because we have one author and one reader, we need to give them appropriate permissions. The author needs to have permissions to the certified dataset that we created, and the reader needs to have access to the dashboard. So we'll execute all of this from within Cloud9 using the APIs. Okay. I'm going to switch back to Cloud9 and navigate to the section for module 3, multi-tenancy. In line number 143, I have the command to create namespace. I'm going to copy that. And let's break it down, what this command does. As you can tell, it's invoking the create namespace API. It's passing in the account number, and it's giving in the namespace, which we are naming customer A. And we are mentioning that the identity store is going to be QuickSight. That is where all the users of this namespace are going to be stored. Okay, so I'm going to copy this and come over to my terminal and paste it there. So there my namespace got created. I got a status 202. Clear. Now I want to provision my reader and the author, right? So here is my statements for creating author and reader. I'm going to upload the file, which I already did. I'm going to open up this customer author and then replace the account number and then execute the register user. This is pretty much familiar for you. We already executed this once. So let's find the JSON for customer A author and make sure our account numbers are properly updated. So there are 2 places I need to change my account with the number. And you can see this author also is restricted by the custom permissions that we assigned our ISV author, which is restrict data source. I'm going to go ahead and save this file. Close out of it. Navigate over to my provision customer author. Copy the, oh, that's the author, sorry. in line number 149, I'm going to copy that command, come to my terminal, and execute this. So I got a status 201. The customer got created with the custom permissions restrict data source. So next is the customer reader. I'm going to open that JSON file for customer reader. You know the drill by now. Looking for my account number, replacing it. And this reader is registered in customer A namespace. And right now we are not providing any restrictions because these restrictions, custom permission restrictions, are only for the author type of persona. We have to give dashboard permissions in order to restrict the permissions for this reader. So I've replaced these two places. I'm going to save it, close out of this file, navigate down to provision, create register user command in line number 155. Now copy it, go over to the terminal, execute the command. Got a status 201, cool, got created. So now the next step is to, so now what I've done, I've created the namespace, I've created the users. Now I want to give them access permissions. So for the author needs to get permissions to the data set and the reader needs to get permissions to the dashboard. So that's what I'm going to do now. So first I'm going to start with the author. I'm going to give them dataset permissions. I'm going to open the file for update dataset permissions. And what I need to do is replace, besides replacing the account info number, I also need to replace the certified dataset ID, okay, before I execute this permissions command. So opening up this one. Oops, that is not the one I need. Let me find my account number. I'll replace my account number. And I need my certified dataset ID. I'm going over to my helper file to look for that. I know I captured it. Here is my ID. Certified dataset ID. And what is it doing? It is giving the author permission to describe the dataset for this particular dataset that we are giving permission to. So the dataset ID pertains to the certified dataset, and against that dataset, the author has permissions to describe it, describe the dataset permissions, describe the ingestion, and pass the dataset and list the ingestions. So these are all the permissions they have against this dataset. I'm going to save. Go back to my, and close out of the JSON file, go back to my helper file, find the command that I need to run, and that is in line number 162. Coming back to my terminal, pasting this update data permissions API. And I got a status 200 that says this permission was applied to this data set. All that is remaining now is to give permissions to the reader. So I'm going to open up update dashboard permissions JSON, replace the account numbers as usual. I don't believe you need to change anything else. Actually, I'll do a replace all. So there it is, it's replaced in 3 different places. So what is this file, JSON file doing? It is stating the dashboard ID. For this dashboard ID, customer A author has the permission to describe, list, and query the dashboard, and the same thing for customer A reader, right? So these are the permissions we are defining against this dashboard. Let's go ahead and save it. Close out of it. Find the command to run this update API. Navigate to my terminal. Paste this. And I got a status 200, which means it deployed. So with that, I finish all the deployment here. Let me go and test. So what is my next step? I need to log in. Okay, so let me log in as customer A author, right? So I'm going to sign out of the browser. Actually, let me use the console link. I'm going to go back to my admin workshop because this is the customer who's logging in, and they're using IAM to authenticate. So I'm going to go through the AWS login. So I'm going back to my helper file, locating my console link, copying it, I'm opening a new browser, and logging in as customer A author. I believe it's the same password. Let me check. Is it the same password? Yeah, it is password capital P1 bang. That is the password, same password we've been using for ISV admin and everybody else. So I'm going to log in, look for QuickSight. So this is the first time the customer A author is logging in. So all the samples are getting created. And if they go to the folders, no folders are shared with them because folders are only for the internal folks to collaborate, the ISV team to collaborate with one another. So they do not have that access. This author doesn't have the access. But when they go to data set, they are able to have access to the certified data set. That is the data set ID we gave in the JSON file that allowed them access. Because of the restrict permissions, custom permission that we created, they do not have access to do anything else other than create analysis on this data set. So they can go ahead and create new analysis based on this as usual, right? So everything will be available for them. There is no restriction from within the analysis side. And the dashboard, because we set them up with dashboard permissions, they can access the dashboard. No problem, right? So let's now log in as customer A reader. Sorry, we have to do the console once again. Copy the console link. Use customer A reader. Same password, password 1 bang with a capital P. Log in to QuickSight, look for QuickSight. It'll SSO into QuickSight. And here, because it's a reader, they have absolutely no other capabilities that they can see, right? So they can only have access to the dashboard, and this is the only dashboard we have given them access to. And they do not have the ability to export or do anything else. We haven't defined interactivity here yet. If you have defined drill down or any other filters, all those will be available, of course, but we have chosen not to show other options that are typically available, such as downloading to CSV, exporting to CSV. Okay, so with that, we kind of come to the conclusion of our workshop here today. So let's quickly summarize what we did. So we started off with a workflow where ISV, we are assuming an ISV company is the one that's doing this workflow. We can also do it within the enterprise environment. So we are customizing the user access to QuickSight. We set up the data source, and with the data curator, we created the data set as a data curator. We shared it with the business analyst who created the analysis and visualization. They shared it with the admin who deployed dashboard and configured for multi-tenancy. In terms of deploying the dashboard itself, we created the data source, data set, and the analysis within the console. But we also saw how it can be created using API. We didn't go through that in detail, but it is possible. We saw there were APIs available. And then we created the template. We created the dashboard. We also associated the dashboard with the production data set as opposed to the dev data set. So we saw how template creation required both the dataset ARN and analysis ARN, and the dashboard creation required the template ARN and the dataset ARN. And we then implemented multi-tenancy by creating and mechanism for user segregation by creating namespaces. So we segregated the customer by a namespace called customer A, and we registered these two users. We assigned restrict author permission for this particular author. We also gave them permission to access the certified data set and not the regular data set. With the reader, we gave them permission to access dashboard, and that is what we saw. We tested it all out. So I believe we are at time, about 10 minutes to spare. Any questions?
I do not see any new questions there, Padmaja.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending today's admin workshop, and thank you, Padmaja, for a great session. For everyone on the call, in an effort to build a larger and more informed QuickSight community, you can post your questions and answers on the QuickSight page, and I will have that link posted to the chat momentarily. And please join us next week's session, November 18th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific time, building advanced analytics and dashboards within QuickSight. Now, if you attended one of the first two of those sessions, there will be a variation to that, so please don't miss it. Again, thank you for your time and attention today. Have a great rest of your day and a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thank you all.